I'm really sorry for jumping the queue, but I was invited many months ago, and in between there was another invitation for a wood building. So it's a hard time being at two places at once. I'm very happy being here and presenting something about passive houses. Createra is a small architectural studio which works and is specialized in passive houses and natural materials in buildings. Okay. And maybe not many of you know something about these passive houses. I will tell you a little bit the background, why we do all this. It's a very fragile world we are living in. When we look from above, you don't see really where the problem lies. Everything is blue and white and nice. But the reality is a little bit different. The reality is that 40% of the energy we use is used in buildings. It may be in cooling, heating, or building them. So it's a major part of our energy we are expending. It's going just into these buildings, which is really something to think about. In fact, these houses, how they are built, they are huge radiators, radiating heat out into the space. And it all costs money. It's not for free. We have to pay for it. Why should we need to do this? You can see the development of the CO2 concentrations over the different centuries. Well, there is a fairly huge spike here in the last 100 years. In fact, we are using all the oil just for driving, heating, and of course that CO2 level, the parts per million, are rising steadily. We already have passed the 400 ppm barrier. Of course, this will lead to higher temperatures on our globe. This will lead to more severe weather. We have a good example outside, I think. And we'll need to do something drastic. One of the possibilities, and everybody is talking about it, it's very popular, is using alternative energies. We have wind, we have geothermal, we have photovoltaics. There are lots of possibilities where we can get the energy from. Our sun is delivering 40,000 times more energy to our planet than we use, than we need. We just have to tap it. It's not so simple, but it's doable. It's something everybody has to work on their specialization. If it might be producers of windmills, photovoltaics will become more efficient. So we have a whole possibility coming up which will help us for the future. We have a reminder, Fukushima, a tragedy. On the other side, clean energy in a certain way, no CO2 emissions. We need energy. We can't exist without energy. Japan will have major problems when they turn off their nuclear plants. And of course they will have even larger problems if something like this will occur again. They were fairly lucky, to say so, in this case. What we can do, and we can do it all, is saving energy. The problem is it's not very sexy and it's not really easy to sell it. Everything you save, well, how do you sell that to somebody? Everybody wants to produce something so that they can sell it. It's much better concept in a certain way. They sell green energy, which costs more, for example. They try to sell safe nuclear power plants, which cost more, of course. Well, the funny thing is, every kilowatt hour you save, is 1 kilowatt hour you don't need to produce. And in fact, saving that 1 kilowatt hour is much, much cheaper than producing that 1 kilowatt hour. We have seen this maybe on these, well, how do you call them in English? Energy marks or whatever. You can get a washing machine A++, which needs less energy. In fact, this is fairly poor. Going from this level to this level there will maybe half the energy consumption. It's not really a huge leap forward. I have a passive house which was built 20 years ago, which we'll see a bit later. It had a built-in fridge 20 years ago. That fridge was completely noiseless, and it's used less energy than any of the fridges the guy in the house wanted to buy today. It was built on a different concept from Sweden. Just shows that this has stagnated completely. I think it's on the trend. There is a lot to do in this area, household appliances. But just to tell you that saving energy is in fact the cheapest way to, it's cheaper than producing energy, and there are a lot of possibilities in this area as well. Of course, we should start where we use most, which is in the buildings, which we'll look at in just a way. Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This was very wisely said by Bjorn, former Norwegian Prime Minister, in '87. That's how many years ago? It's quite a few years back, and not much has changed really. They are trying still to agree on some solutions, but in fact the speed of development is going on just as before. And this is just a map of the extent of the ice cover at the North Pole, which, as you can see, Fridtjof Nansen, which went to the North Pole or tried to get there, he could have gone there by boat fairly easily instead of getting through the ice, as I will show you just in a short while. This is an example of what happens when we don't take care of our globe, and we have to do something. And in fact, it's not that difficult. And I will show you that it was possible in 1896. We didn't have to wait 100 years. In 1896, this boat, Fram, which is in fact on exhibition in Oslo. I'm sorry, I'm very nationalistic as a Norwegian. I'm trying Brundtland, Fridtjof Nansen, and so on. No, it's just by chance that they have come up. This boat is very exciting. Very exciting in a way I will tell you. Of course, he went by boat all the way along the Russian border. It's 1896, remember? Here he got frozen into the ice. The ice drifts across, close to the North Pole. Here he gets off on the skis and wants to get to the North Pole. He never gets there. He has to turn back for several reasons. He went back on skis to the Franz Josef Land and did another boat back. But Fram continued through the ice until they reached the other side, where summer came and they could go back with the boat. You can imagine winter in the ice. That's about the harshest conditions you can find. Well, let's look at his diary, because this tells us something about how a passive house works today. The sides of the ship were lined with tarred felt. Then came a space with cork padding. Yeah. Steel paneling, then a thick layer of felt, then an airtight linoleum, and the last of all, an inner paneling. A total thickness of about 15 inches, okay, with insulation. The skylight was most exposed and was protected by 3 panes of glass. Yes, this is 1896. It's not, we have 2 planes here probably. The frame is a comfortable abode. The thermometer stands at 22 above or 22 below it. We have no fire in the stove. Even the ventilation is excellent, especially since we rigged up the air sail. It sends it through the ventilator. You can sit here warm and comfortable with only a lamp burning. I'm thinking of having the stove removed altogether. It's only in the way. Well, this was the first passive house. Okay? And it has every detail a passive house needs. And it was doable in 1896. There is no excuse not doing it today. And 100 years later, it's Wolfgang Feist, it's a German physicist. He came up with the idea, well, there must be some way of insulating a house and putting it together in a way so that we don't need that much heating. And this is the first passive house that was built. It's a row house with 4 apartments over 3 floors each apartment, built in 91 in Germany. You can see a lot of glass on the south side to harvest the sun in winter time to heat the house. Fairly compact building so that you have less areas that can cool. That's how this first house was done. That's where this very energy-saving fridge was in, and they couldn't get another one. And it's a very simple system. We use a very well-insulated envelope. We take care that there are no heat bridges or cold bridges. We use glass on the south side to get more sunshine in. The sun we get a net gain of energy in wintertime through the glass. And we have a ventilation system because we don't want to open the windows and let cold draft make us sick. We want this ventilation unit to recover the heat and replenish it with preheated air in the whole building. This is very easy. The air goes through the earth, or it's in another way, preheated indirectly, then through a heat exchanger, and the heat that goes out, the extracted air from the kitchen, the toilets, and so on, heats the air coming in to the living room, to the sleeping rooms, and so on. It doesn't need much energy, just a few watts, 40 watts maybe. It's like a small bulb to produce this nice, comfortable inside air, which is necessary that we feel well. And if we do all this, insulated with this super insulated envelope, take care of all these heat or cold bridges, and we do take care of the ventilation, and then it's enough to heat the house with about 50 candles. That's the reality which works. Of course, if you have 50 candles burning, you don't want a lot of wind coming and blowing it out. You don't really need much of a draft to let all that heat just disappear through some gaps in your construction. So what you have to take care of is that the building is airtight. It's something that also creates a very healthy building. There is no leak of air which can then condense in the construction, which then makes the walls wet, which can then destroy building over a longer period of time. It doesn't have to be a wooden building. It can also be a plaster building where the plaster is the airtight layer. It's a fairly simple system. You just have to think that you have to make it airtight. We do this also, we test this also with the blower door test. With the ventilator we create a overpressure inside or under pressure of 50 Pascal and measure how much air leaks through the envelope. We have to meet a certain target. So it's something that's tested on the building site, and there's a guarantee that we do a proper building. Just like to give you an example, if you have maybe 400 meters of envelope, 400 square meters of envelope, if the hole is bigger than my fist, the overall holes, all the small holes is bigger than my fist, it's not a passive house anymore. That's just a rule of thumb you can use. So this is very important, and the passive house can look like this. It's one in close to Žilina. As you can see, it has windows oriented to the south. This is, of course, also nice in winter, because when the sun is out, you get all the sun into the house, and it's nice and warm. You can feel the sun heating you. Maybe you have felt it on the skiing slope sometimes. You even can take off your anorak when the sun comes out. It's very similar here. The customer called me and he said, well, it was in February. We have 26 degrees inside. I'm walking around in the t-shirt and the heating hasn't been on for 4 days. That's when the sun is out. And it really works. And a passive house can, of course, look just like any other house and be very nice. We love to use wood, clay, other natural materials in the building and produce a very nice atmosphere. You can't really see any difference except for that you use very good windows. You have maybe thicker walls, or at least the walls have more insulation. But otherwise you have some ventilation outlets which are more or less hidden. You can't even see any on the pictures. You have to really look for them. So here you have another example with the clay and just the painted gypsum board in contrast. You can do very nice things with it, and it's doable today. Anybody can build a passive house if they want to. And the best thing is you'll pay maybe 50 euros a month on your utility bill for your electricity. That's it, nothing more. So long term, you can save on it, because this house is going to stand here for the next 60 years. There will be no quick return, but already the 150 euros you save every month, at least, you could put into a mortgage to pay for the cost difference. Because there is, of course, a cost difference. The windows are better, more expensive, there is more insulation, there is a ventilation unit. But things you cannot put into any money, that's the comfort, the increased comfort of living. The healthy air, you wake up in the morning and you don't feel this stuffy air in your bedroom. You can breathe, you don't have any headaches. You have a feeling of living more or less outside from the quality of air and from the way the sun heats and works with the house. Thank you very much.